When it comes to street photography, or any photography for that matter, having a style is a goal that we all work towards. And the main reason for it is because when you have your own style, you can have all your images as one cohesive body of work. So when you're sharing on Instagram, in a gallery or whatever you like, all the images kind of just sit well next to each other. Also, having a style helps you stand out from everyone else out there, and the more unique yet tasteful your style is, the more well-known you will become as a photographer. Now, we all know that editing plays a huge part on style. It's probably the easiest way that you can change your style regardless of how you captured or what you've captured on your camera. However, there are many other little aspects which feed into this whole style pie that I think we sometimes forget about. And certainly, as I was learning this, I focused so much on editing that I didn't really pay too much attention to the other stuff. And if I did pay more attention to it, then maybe I would have found my style a lot quicker. And in this video, I want to go through these other items and just share with you my personal experience and things I've learned over the years as to how you can utilize those things to sort of speed up your style finding mission goal. Yeah. Oh, and before we go any further, I know this channel has grown quite a lot over the last month or two, so a huge welcome to everyone who's new here, and a huge thank you to all of you for the continued support. I keep moving my arms around, but it is what it is. Right, let's get into the video. The first item is purpose. What I mean by that is, why are you taking photos? So, let's say if you want to document the struggles in your city during COVID or during any other period of time, your images will have a certain look to them straight away because of the direction that you're going in. So you will probably have very raw, unedited, and probably not very picturesque images. However, from a documentary perspective, they can be very good because they really convey the raw emotion and just what's happening in a city at the time. On the other hand, if you like picturesque, pretty nice pictures and you literally just take photos on your weekends away and holidays, then obviously your images will have a lot more postcardy feel to them. They'll be soft, they'll be clean, they'll be polished, saturated, like just very nice pictures. So straight away, when you decide which way you want to go with photography, you're already kind of like putting a bit of a style, if you like, on your work, because you're not going to have very gritty, very like grungy pictures of a little Italian town in the same way that you're not going to have like very, photoshopped and very nice photos of someone going through hard times, because that might not convey the right emotion. So my tip here before going any further is really think about why you're doing photography. And that will certainly have a huge impact in the direction that your style will go as you get better and as you spend more time doing it. Your life can play quite a huge role in where your style goes with photography. So for example, let's say if you're in your 20s, 30s, single, traveling around the world, then the things you photograph might be a bit different to someone who is 40, 50 with a family. In the same way, if let's say you work night shifts and then you commute, I don't know, during sunrise and sunset, then obviously your photography will be different to someone who, let's say, is self-employed or only can shoot at lunchtime. Let's take another example. You know Josh Jack, the photographer, right? So he's known for these nighttime photos in Soho, but from an interview I watched with him like a few weeks ago, he said that the reason he kept going out at night is because he had insomnia, therefore using photography as a means to sort of tire himself out, thus in the process creating some of his best work, and certainly the work that's published recently. So my point is, wherever you are in life, good or bad, don't try to fight that with regards to your photography, but try to embrace it and obviously see how you can use photography as a reflection of where you are. Even if you're going through tough times, especially now, there's nothing to say that photography can't be your outlet and a reflection of where you are, because looking back at this, you can create certain work now that maybe in future, when you're in a better place, you might not create. So I guess my point here is really evaluate where you are and use photography as a reflection of that. Your choice of location can play a huge part in where your style goes. So for example, if you go to shoot in Shoreditch, Brick Lane, Camden Town, you will have a very raw and very gritty look to your images because that's the location, that's what the location is. In the same way, if you go to Canary Wharf or Bank, you will have a very clean, more polished look to your images because, again, that's what the location is. Some photographers are known for covering Asia, other photographers are known for covering, Central Europe or the Midwest of the US. Basically, my point is that when you focus on one specific location, that in itself can become your style. So you might be known for covering seaside towns. You might be known for covering, let's say, remote villages somewhere, for example. So even though I'm not saying find one thing and stick to it, do realize that your choice of location does have an impact in your style, especially if you put it all together in one body of work. So my final bit of advice here is to really think about which locations you enjoy shooting in the most and which locations bring you the photos that you like the most. Now, by all means, as I've said, don't disregard everywhere else, still go and still experiment and see, but at least you know that if you want these types of images, you might have to go to these types of locations, which will then create a similar kind of look, therefore work a bit more towards your style. Now we're really starting to look at things which have a huge impact to your style, and light is probably up there with one of the biggest ones, if not the biggest one, because if we actually think about it, without light there's no photography. So, the obvious one, right, is daytime, nighttime, very different, right? Then we have fog, mist, haze, sun, midday sun, summer sun, winter sun, blue hour, golden hour, you name it. When you pick a certain lighting condition to work with, you need to understand that that will ultimately direct your style. Let's say for instance, I only shoot on bright sunny days, or try to anyway. If I then take how I edit my sunny day photos and try to edit a cloudy photo, then it will look completely rubbish. So having an understanding and an appreciation for which type of light you like will definitely help you and direct you towards your style. In the same way, there are many photographers, let's say, Billy D, for example, who is really known for nighttime photography in New York, and that's how his style almost evolves, certainly for those images around nighttime moody photography. And then with me, for instance, it's sunny photography. My style and all, let's say my presets, for instance, they all really revolve around either sunrise, sunset, or midday sun. So to summarize, my advice to you is go out to try different types of light, find 2 or 3 lighting conditions that you like. So again, for me, sunny, foggy, for example, right? And then work with those lighting conditions because that will just really narrow down your style going forwards. I think weather can be kind of an extension to the lighting because obviously certain lighting comes with certain weather. So for instance, bright sunny days is bright sunny weather, and then obviously moody days, rain, snow, things like that can also play into your style. As I've mentioned, let's say take Billy D for example, his nighttime photos usually tend to happen when there's rain, snow, fog and certain weather conditions, and then my photos certainly in daytime usually happen when it's just a beautiful, nice sunny day. So take weather as an extension to light and put them together if you like, and just think about what type of weather conditions that you like to shoot in the most. The only caveat here is make sure you enjoy it, because there are so many people that like the idea of going out in the rain to take photos, but hate it in practice because, let's face it, it's a pain in the ass. So don't just do it because you think it looks good. You actually need to enjoy it. If you like walking around with an umbrella and your camera taking photos in the rain when everyone else is at home, then do it by all means. But don't think you have to do it in order to define the style or to get good photos. Your choice of subject and how you photograph that subject can also play into your style in the long term. So for example, with me, let's take people. I would say probably 90% of the people in my photos you shouldn't be able to recognize because they're either silhouetted or they're just turned away or at a certain angle. Sure, there'll be a few that you could see, but in the grand scheme of things, I try to avoid that because for me, I prefer to have people anonymous. In the same way, a lot of my London photos will include buses, taxis, and London landmarks, because I want my images to be very clearly London and not so much touristy, but I do want them to have a certain element of making tourists want to visit the city and not just being, street photography, whatever that is. So your choice of subject will play a huge role. Now, on the other hand, there are people who really get in other people's faces and want to have very raw emotions and very sort of clearly visible facial expressions in the images. No, this is not right or wrong, it's just their personal preference. And there are other people who take photos of corners of buildings, for example, and empty garages and old cars, which again, no right or wrong, it's just their style and their approach. So once you've figured out what you like to take photos of, then you can certainly start to curate a look around that. And the only way to find that out is just through trying. Go out, and if you want to try and take corners of buildings, then do that. You'll soon realize if you like it or not. If you don't like it, move on and try something else. So ultimately, what you choose to shoot and how you choose to shoot it can feed into your style. In terms of cameras, I don't think there's a huge impact to your style. Obviously, you've got the film versus digital thing. Yes, you'll get a different look with a film camera. Also, your approach to photography will be very different with a film camera, which can, I guess, influence your style and what you decide to take photos of. But aside from that, if you just look at generic camera brands, I don't think there's all that much between them. Obviously, if you take extremes and you compare a medium format 100 megapixel camera to an iPhone 5, then yes, your approach to photography and your photos will be different. But generally speaking, it's not something that I would focus on in terms of the actual camera for defining your style. Obviously, Fuji cameras do have a certain look to them. Canon cameras have a certain look to them. But with any modern digital camera, that can be completely changed in post-production. So, yeah, there's not much in it. However, this is where gear can make a difference, because the focal length you decide to use and the lens you decide to use can play into your overall style. So what I mean by that is, I know photographers who mainly use a 12 to 24 ultra wide lens. Okay, I also know photographers who will mainly use a 70 to 200 zoom lens for their street photography. Again, neither is right or wrong, it's just their approach, and obviously they will have a very, very different look to their images. If you're creating a cohesive body of work, and let's say you have 2 images shot at 12mm and 2 images shot at 200mm, it'll be a very, very different look and feel to those photos. So my advice here is try to figure out what focal length you like, because ultimately that focal length can play into your overall style and look. Let's take me, for example. Whenever I look at all of my photos, I would say 75% of them lie somewhere between 50mm and around 80mm on full frame terms. The best way to figure that out is if you have a 24 to 70, go out, take 1,000 photos that you like, and then filter through by focal length and see, okay, well, 80% of my photos are taken at 35mm, therefore that is the kind of look that you like, and that's what I would focus on. Obviously, do go either side of what you like, because sometimes you need to have a telephoto lens, sometimes you need to have a wide angle lens, it depends on the subject, but do keep in mind that in the long term, as whatever focal length 80% of your work is, that is kind of your style. And yeah, do try to think about it, because as I've said, if you have 2 images at 12mm, 2 images at 200mm, 1 image at 50, 1 image at 20, like it kind of can be a bit of all over the place. So yeah, it can play a huge part, and the only way to find which one you like is to experiment, as I've said, and then search in Lightroom to see which one you use the most. Creative choices can be things like long exposures, panning, what else? Intentional camera movements that people do. I don't have a huge amount of experience because I'm not really into any of these things. However, all I can say is if you want to experiment with them, please do, but don't get yourself into a rut of doing these things because it's cool online, because sure, you can create a style around intentional camera movements or panning shots, but if you're doing it because you've seen it's popular online and you don't actually really enjoy it that much, you'll get to a point when you get bored. And when you get bored and you try and change up your style to something completely different that you actually enjoy, let's say if you want to build an audience, the audience you've built, they like your intentional camera movements or panning shots, for instance, right? So my point is, because I've kind of lost track of my point is, mess around with these things, just only really take it seriously if you are 100% in love with that type of photography. That's all I can say on that. So editing will obviously play quite a large part to your style, because you can create a certain look that you apply to all your photos, specifically around color grading and then how you deal with shadows, highlights and things like that. One thing I would say, because editing is a whole can of worms in itself, but for the purpose of this video, all I want to say to you is you can't, excuse my language, polish a turd when it comes to editing. Editing will steer your photo in a certain direction, sure, but it will not take a photo that's going in that direction and make it go in completely that direction. So for example, if you take a photo on a cloudy day, don't expect to be able to create good light and to create interesting light when it comes to editing. I mean, I'm sure you can if you're into Photoshop art and things like that, but that's not really photography then. Then you go, as I've said, into like art and stuff like that. So my point with editing is, yes, there are certain things you can do. Yes, you can color grade, you can introduce highlight tone, shadow tone, you can split tone, you can do curves, you can do all sorts of stuff. But editing is more of like a final touch to an already good photo. It doesn't create a good photo. And yes, you can obviously add your own look and feel to the image, but it should just be that sprinkling on top and not everything when it comes to photography. So as an example of little things you can do in editing to give your images a certain look. So I, for example, reduce clarity and sharpening in my images because I like really soft photos. I can go a step further and then get them into Photoshop or Affinity Photo, remove things like cigarette butts and rubbish on the floor to give them a clean look, and then even add a bit of an autumn effect to the light source in the image just to give it an even softer glow. That's just my personal approach. Other people like to increase clarity and have proper high contrast sort of defined details in images. Not my cup of tea, but everyone's different. In terms of color grading, some people add reds to the shadows, some people add oranges to the shadows. I personally go for a little bit of a split tone, and it just depends. I sometimes have, let's say, oranges in the highlights and maybe reds in the shadows or blues in the shadows, but you know, we can spend literally all day here talking about that. I did make a video about editing, which I'll link below or somewhere here. And obviously, if you want to see how I actually edit, probably the easiest way to do that is to grab my preset pack. Yeah, that's a plug. And again, you can do that probably here or here. So, yeah. And finally, our style can be governed by even how we present our images. So you've probably seen on Instagram, some people, I used to do the white borders. Some people don't. Some people do landscape photos only. Some people do portrait photos only. Some people will post one single image. Other people will post a set of images. How we choose to present our work, I think, can actually feed into the whole style pie, albeit very, very little. So I wouldn't worry about this too much if you've still not figured out the stuff I've already spoken about. But if you've pretty much figured most of the stuff out already, then do think about how you present your work, because that can ultimately lead into you creating a certain style around your work. Because if it's really well presented in a certain way, then you'll become known for that. So, which kind of goes into you having your own style and your own look. So as you can see, there are many different things that feed into the overall style pie. Now, please don't stress out over the fact that you need to have every single one of those nailed. I certainly don't. I reckon if you got 2 or 3 of those nailed in terms of the points I've discussed, you're definitely on your way, you know. So over time, you will narrow down a lot more, and you will certainly pick things that you like and you don't like. The only thing I would really say is, if you're not sure where to go, where to start, just do what you enjoy. Don't do what's popular, because if you enjoy going out in the rain, then maybe taking photos in the rain is for you, and then you've already sort of started going down the route of that particular look. So my point is, just focus on what you enjoy, and then things will develop around that. Another thing to keep in mind is you can't force this. You can't say to yourself, right, today I'm going to find my style. It just doesn't work like that, because it takes a long time to do it. And like, it's taken me, I would say, best part of 3-4 years to get to the style that I have now. And guess what? In 3-4 years, my style might be very different to what it is today. So remember that your style is not an end goal. It's I hate the word journey, but it is a journey, because like it changes as you grow. And guess what? A different part of your life, as I've mentioned at the start of this video, your style could also change. So to me, a style is a reflection of where I am, and it's a reflection of how I look at photography right now, and I think that's a good thing, and it will always evolve. But if you feel like you don't have a style right now at all, just please keep in mind this is a long-term commitment, and it will take you 2-3 years of just chipping away at these little things to build your style over time. And finally, the last thing I want to say is, it is possible, and you probably will get bored of your style at some point. I have many times. I've actually got bored of the style that I was using last summer, and I reverted back to the style that I used the previous summer, and now I'm kind of working on that to see where else I can take it. Getting bored of a style is good, because it means that you've outgrown it and you are developing. So if you find yourself getting bored at how you edit photos, then you know what? It's a good thing. It means that it's time for you to level up and to see where else and where next you can take your work. So I hope that you have found this video useful. I hope it's not been too long. I'm not sure how long I've been rabbiting on, but I think it's been a bit long anyway. So yeah, hope you found it useful. If you do have any questions, comments, please write them down below. I know this is a very, very big topic, especially the editing side, but as I've said, the editing videos below that I've done, have a look at that, see what you think. And yeah, thank you so much for your continued support. Have a good day, have a good week. It's been emotional, and see you in a bit. Bye.